so great to see everyone. We're excited to have our vegan fashion and sustainability workshop hosted by Etheria Animal Welfare Ambassador Vikki Lenola with guest speaker George Engelmayr, biomedical engineer and founder of Cultivated Biomaterials. And my name is Selena. I'm one of the directors at Etheria. This is part of the Etheria Activist Workshop series, which is really exciting. So we'll be sharing the links in the chat afterwards. But it's bringing together award-winning young activists and leaders who are Etheria ambassadors from over 80 countries around the world to share their knowledge and create interactive spaces for learning, collaboration, and discussion around world issues and advocacy skill building. Um, and Also, yeah, just wanted to go and share before we start off a little bit about Vikki before she starts her presentation. Vikki Lenola is the founder and head publicist of Lenola PR. Her boutique public relations agency secures relevant and top-tier media coverage for their clients. Vikki is on the advisory board for the Freedom Food Alliance for public relations and media expertise, and she's also the producer and director of the Vegan Fashion Show, a charitable and educational event in Canada, as well as a legacy verified influencer as a world-renowned model and activist. Her educational background includes an environmental studies degree from the University of Waterloo, a business diploma, and continuous learning, such as an effective altruism fellowship focused on animal advocacy. So I'd like to pass it off to Vikki, who will get us started.
Hello, hello. Okay, well, good evening. I think a lot of us are in the Eastern time zone, so good evening. I will share my screen. So I'm going to dive right in here. So I'm going to do a quick introduction for anyone that's not familiar with what vegan fashion is even. So vegan fashion is materials that are not made from animals. But then more specifically, what we're really excited about is next gen materials. So these are materials that are sustainably superior than traditional animal derived materials. And so why does this matter? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, and we're going to go over a lot of them today. And this is a little bit going to be back and forth because these things are all interconnected. So although I did try to kind of organize it a little bit, everything's connected. So we're going to jump around a little bit. We'll start with an intro to the vegan fashion show and what our models learned from our casting call earlier this year. We'll go over methane, deforestation, biodiversity loss, zoonotic disease, antibiotic overuse, water pollution from leather, water use specifically from leather, because leather is one of the worst, byproducts versus co-products, next gen leathers, cultivated leather by guest speaker George Engelmayr, silk alternatives and precision fermentation, next gen faux furs, progress and fur bands, plant-based feathers. That's exciting. What about wool? Pros and cons of blended materials, humane washing, traceability, transparency. Vegan fashion is inclusive, cultural inertia, and cognitive dissonance. And then finally, some recommendations. So a bit about, let me move this here, a bit about the vegan fashion show. We started in 2022 and we doubled in size in 2023. In those years, we raised $10,000 for Animal Justice. They are the organization leading the legal fight for animal protection in Canada. And in 2024 and 2025, we started doing partnership events. So with Planted Expo, we've done that in Toronto and Vancouver, as well as VegTO, and now more recently, the National Women's Show. So these are some of the biggest events in Canada. So it's really exciting. So although we don't have our ticket sales to donate to animal justice, we have a much larger audience most of the time. And then we are actually starting to donate on a smaller scale to animal justice now that we have a small but still growing team. Our co-producer Jess, I see, is in here, and she's been a great help. So yeah, we're excited about that. We're always looking for volunteers, whether virtually for helping with graphics, that would be great. Creating educational content, either for social media or for school lessons. We really want to start doing that within the next year, and that's part of why we're teaming up with Etheria. And yeah, just like general assisting with marketing or networking. And these are some press clippings. So my public relations agency sponsors PR for the events. And also we did some PR for Planted Expo was one of my clients as well. So that was exciting. And we have some really good headlines like this one, clever, effective activism, the vegan fashion show changing the industry while making it fun. So I like that one because that's what we're all about. So I will show you a clip from our model casting earlier this year. And first I want to say that um, most model castings, you just go in and you go out, you do your walk and then you go out. So there's no, um, like mingling or this is like a very different concept where it's an event on its own. We have food there, plant-based food. So a lot of these models have never tried plant-based food. So that's another part of the activism. And it's an incentive for them to come join us. So we're really going above and beyond what other fashion events do. We give them the presentation. And also it can be quite daunting because they are auditioning in front of one another, which is not always like that. So we do a mock runway and they have quite a bit of fun with it though. So I'll show you a little bit about what they learned after watching our presentation.
And what did you learn today about vegan fashion? Well, we don't need to kill animals to stay stylish. For me, is being new to this industry, I think I didn't know that a lot of the fashion were like directly harming like the animals. And I think it's just good to be aware of that going into this industry. I actually learned a lot, to be honest with you, especially with the toxins in the water and like all the microplastics and everything, and just the way that animals are hurt and the amount of animals that we actually do kill every year was genuinely a shock to me. So I'm actually going to go home and kind of look into it and see what little adjustments I can make. So I actually learned about a lot of the sustainability that goes around in big major fashion weeks that I actually had no idea about. Such more sustainable options, and that there's some great options that aren't made of plastic and that you can use plant-based material to have that very edgy, funky, trendy look of leather. Because how would we feel if our family is killed just for entertainment purposes, right? It's not good. So I respect them and yeah, be kind, humble.
I like the presentation and everything. It's so empowering to know how cruelty impacts the animals, and it's our responsibility to do something for it, right? And I'm very happy I'm supporting this cause.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, Gopher. Yeah, that it emits lesser amount of carbon dioxide to the environment, which is really friendly. And that's really interesting to know that. Yeah, I was here for the first vegan fashion show, so it's always the same kind of like heart-wrenching but motivating kind of things that we just want to keep this energy going in the industry of like just trying to educate everybody and make things better. So I've been vegan for 9 years. And honestly, it is such a beautiful thing to see the fashion industry move more into the direction of less cruelty. I feel like having the additional options is something that we definitely need to educate more people about. And I think more education means that more people are going to move towards it. And I just think it's going to be better for everyone. What did you learn today about vegan fashion?
So many animals killed for fashion. Vegan fashion show is making a fantastic job saving them. And
what did you learn about vegan fashion today? I mean, just how much like I do it for the animals, but I'm like, it's so much more sustainable also for the environment. And it's easier than trying to do it with like animal leather. And so it's like, it's so important. We can all just make that change to do it, you know? Awesome.
Yay. Okay. So that was from earlier this year. And so we do one every year. So now what did the models learn? So we're going to start with methane. And so Collective Fashion Justice, we've teamed up with them. They do some educational content for us. And so I'm just going to read directly from their website because I could ramble on about it, but they've got it all nicely put together. So let's go visit them here. This part is specifically about methane emissions. I don't know if you can see the picture here, but I can't. That's fine. So methane must be cut by 30% by 2030 to curb climate catastrophe. Methane emissions are 86 times more potent than carbon in this short-term worsening global warming rapidly. The good news is methane only lasts around 20 years in the atmosphere as compared to hundreds of years for carbon. Cutting methane emissions now reduces global temperatures quickly. Methane mitigation is our climate emergency brake. Can you guys see these images here or no? No, okay, I can't either, but that's okay. It's basically just a pie chart, so that's fine. I'm gonna just read it to you, and that'll get the gist of it. So over the next 20 years, without change to the fashion industry, it could emit an estimated 712 million tons of carbon equivalent emissions, or 8.13 million tons of methane every year. So this is the big thing here from their report. Despite making up under 4% of overall material used in fashion, 75% of fashion's methane footprint is tied to animal-derived leather, wool, and cashmere production. So that's very important. Less than 4% of this, but it's making like 75% of the problems, right? So this is a problem, and it only makes sense to address this. And the Paris Agreement will fail without methane mitigation, and the fashion industry is on track to overshoot by 50% more emissions than we can afford unless radical action is taken now. So if you like, you can download this report. Oh, there's the little chart here. And that's on the Collective Fashion Justice website. Deforestation and biodiversity laws. So let me move this out of the way here. A football field of forest is removed every 5 seconds or so. That's depending on where you get the stat from. And I thought this was very interesting. You know, diamonds and metals, these are aplenty in the universe, like in other planets and out in the universe, but trees are very rare. It's a sign of life. You know, as far as humans know and can see as of now, it's, you know, it's only here, right? It's very rare. It's very important. So yes, climate change is very important, but some scientists even would say that the forests are more important, but it's all important, really. And so what are the drivers of tropical deforestation? On this chart here, it shows from our world in data, 41% of deforestation is from the beef industry. And then this next highest chart here, bar here in the chart, is between soybean and palm oil. So yes, palm oil is bad, but soybeans, most of that is going to feed the animals in animal agriculture. So, you know, just get rid of that, and that's going to fix a big part of the problem. And then later on, we're going to talk about how it's you know, not really a byproduct, but this we don't really have data about like how much does leather cause deforestation, because people just consider it as part of the beef industry. So that's why I'm using this data here. And then I don't want to compare apples to oranges. So I do want to point out that that is for tropical deforestation, whereas this over here is about deforestation and wildlife globally. So some scary stats here. 137 different species of plants, animals, and birds are lost every single day due to global forest loss. And 50,000 species are lost every year as a result of deforestation. It's very scary numbers. And so that's from tonerbuzz.com. We have the link here if anyone wants to visit that. Zoonotic disease and antibiotic overuse. So again, we're going to visit our friends at Collective Fashion Justice, because it's all mumble jumble in my head and they've got it written down all nicely for us. So zoonotic disease risks in fashion. So today, almost 3 million people and counting have died of COVID-19, with over 130 million infection cases recorded so far. This was obviously written back during the pandemic. Unsurprisingly, our fears around the spread of zoonotic diseases, such as COVID-19 or even worse, continue to rise. As a total ethics fashion organization, we're asking, what responsibility does the fashion industry have to help prevent zoonotic disease spread? So, what is zoonotic disease? Zoonotic disease is an infectious disease that is transmitted from non-human animals to humans. The World Health Organization states that 75% of emerging pathogens, so viruses, bacteria, and so on that cause disease, over the last decade have been zoonotic. So they're transferred from animals to us. And in fact, at least 61% of all human pathogens are zoonotic. See how much of this I want to read here. I'll read it all. COVID-19 is far from the first zoonotic disease we've battled, and it won't be the last unless we take action now. From swine flu to avian flu and MERS, zoonotic diseases are regularly and increasingly infecting humans. Diseases emerge due to the unjust treatment of non-human animals, and we can find them in factory farms, who we trap in the wild, who we kill, eat, and wear. Even today, new strains of zoonotic diseases are popping up all over the world, from a new strain of pig flu with pandemic potential found on pig farms to millions of chickens who are being destroyed en masse across parts of both Asia and Europe due to bird flu outbreaks. And just a side note here, this is part of why I went vegan, because I saw it was a bunch of different things, but I once saw this video of millions of pigs being buried alive, and they were screaming and crying. And some of the workers that had to bury them alive actually committed suicide because they couldn't deal with the trauma of burying these sentient beings, clearly sentient beings, begging for their lives. It was very traumatic. And at the time, I didn't understand why they were being buried, but it's still, they don't need to be. They really don't. So zoonotic pathogens represent a major public health problem around the world due to our close relationship with animals in agriculture as companions and in the natural environment. Agricultural workers in areas with high use of antibiotics for farm animals may be at increased risk of pathogen resistance to current antimicrobial drugs. And that's from the World Health Organization. So I'll just skip to down here. So there are some of the reasons why some of 80% of global antibiotics are fed to farmed animals. This in turn leads to antibiotic-resistant pathogens developing and becoming harder to control. When we have contact with these sick non-human animals, viruses can mutate and transfer to humans, causing us to, as a species, to sugar by getting infected. I don't think that was right. I think that's a typo. By getting infected with zoonotic diseases too. So basically, these animals are in such cramped, dirty, filthy living conditions, in cages and in their urine. It's just really gross. And this makes them very prone to, it's a breeding ground for zoonotic diseases is what it is. And so they need to have antibiotics just to live, just to survive this. And this is part of why humans are becoming we have a problem with antibiotic resistance, and many people can die from antibiotic resistance. It's a huge problem. So there's just so many reasons to not use animals, whether it be for fashion or anything else. So we're going to talk about water pollution from leather tanning, specifically from leather, but of course it's a very resource intensive industry across all of the animals used, but leather is perhaps arguably the worst material out there. Tanneries discharge wastewater laced with toxic chemicals like chromium into waterways. The vast majority of leather is chromium tanned due to the high speed required, because we have 8 billion people on this planet and we need shoes. Those of us that are fortunate enough to need shoes, cars, furniture, and so on, we need it quick. And so this is interesting. A long, long time ago, how was leather tanned? It was brain tanned, so really gross too. They would use the brains from other animals to process the leather. Ugh. And then also now there's also vegetable tanning, not to be confused with plant-based leather. It's just another way to process the leather, but these methods take weeks. We don't have that kind of time. And so the vast majority of leather is chromium tanned, and it's very, very toxic. This water poisons the soil and enters the food chain. There's people, most of the leather is made in India. And even if you get a handbag and they're like, oh, it's made in Italy, the leather itself is made from, made or taken from the animals in India. And so there's children there and families that are fishing in the water where these chemicals are dumped in the rivers. And children are working barefoot all day in chemical soups of toxins. It's really disturbing. Farmers, tannery workers, and local residents suffer from exposure, and millions experience health issues, including cancer, mental illness, child development issues, and skin diseases. So this image here is of a 55-year-old farmer who's regularly exposed to these toxic chemicals because he lived by in this area. And this image is by Sean Gallagher. So what about water usage? We'll compare it from cow leather versus Deserto, which is cactus leather, versus Mirum, which is the most commercially available plastic-free plant-based leather. Although right now, for the next year, they are busy scaling and they're not available to brands to use, but they should be coming back around. Okay, so this is one of the slides we show our models too, because it's a lot of this is like introduction to these issues, and so I found this to be a good comparison. So leather made from cows requires excessive water, not only for the cows, but also to process the leather. And cows are outputting huge amounts of methane, which causes climate change. Compared to cactus leather, only the rainfall is needed for the cacti. No additional water is needed. And these plants are sequestering carbon. So this is helping to slow climate change. Mirum is made from plants, again, zero plastic, no additional water needed, low carbon. We're talking 10 times less carbon compared to animal leather. All right, so back to co-product versus byproduct. So a lot of people will say that, okay, well, the animal's being killed anyways, so we might as well use its skin. Nope, it's not better for the environment. Here from Circumfauna, and this was also seen in Vogue Business. They compared their research, and you can see where, if you want to go look it up, there's the link there to further look at their numbers. They compared the CO2 impact of cow skin degrading in the landfill compared to when it's processed into leather. And actually, it would be better to just leave the skin to rot in the landfill compared to processing it into leather. So, and then also I want to point out that leather is considered a co-product, not a byproduct, because the people and companies they're using the skins, they're profiting just as much, sometimes even more from the skins themselves. And even if it was just a byproduct, animal agriculture is not a sustainable industry. You can visit cowspiracy.com for tons of evidence about this. And I also highly recommend watching Cowspiracy. It's a very, very good environmental documentary. As well, research by, okay, we already went over this. So I'm going to talk about the plant-based leathers. There's so many, cactus, apples, corn, grapes, olive, coffee, tea, like just so many. I could not possibly name them all. They're being made from all sorts of plants, and a lot of them are using the waste from these very sustainable industries. So people that want to use waste products, all right, you support these next-gen materials. So I do want to point out though, so this seems like a miracle, right? Like, wow, we can make leather from plants. Yes, but I do want to point out, even though it's not in my favor to point it out, we are very evidence-based, and I want to point out that most of these still contain plastic on some level, varying degrees. It could be 1%, it could be 40%. To be next gen, they have to be 50% or more, either plant-based or combination with recycled materials. Some, like Innovera and Uncaged Innovations, have just a very teeny minuscule amount, like 0.01%, and they're biopolymers. Biopolymers, this is still considered a plastic. So when I'm giving presentations at these shows, for example, I'm talking about Uncaged Innovations, legally it cannot say zero plastic because it is a plastic, but it's produced from biological sources like plants or bacteria, as opposed to petroleum, and they can be biodegradable. Very confusing, I know. So it's plastic, but it's also made from plants. So it's very confusing. And just for transparency, these are just random images of the cars. So some of these next gen materials are starting to be used for the automotive industry. I read somewhere that about something like, I think it was from WWF, they said that 20% of the leather is for the automotive industries. And so I would love to see this for more vehicles and furniture. So I'm really happy that Modern Meadow, who makes Innovera, is teaming up with Mercedes-Benz, and Uncaged Innovations is teaming up with Jaguar and Land Rover. So there are some plastic-free next-gen leathers. It's very far and few in between. Here are some that we're showcasing at our booth, and we're going to give some samples out to some of the designers. I just got this recently, Iori. This is eucalyptus plant-based, and I'm going to have some projects coming up with them next year too. I'm excited about Light. They are mushroom-based. And Reveltech, they have two actually. One is made from hemp and one is made from algae. And although it's not what we want, I wanted to point out that even entirely plastic vegan leather has less than half the environmental impacts compared to animal leather, and that's according to the 2017 Pulse of the Fashion Industry report. As well, the leather industry doesn't want you to know, but they're often coated in plastic. So you see all these Louis Vuitton bags, like consumers cannot even tell the difference because they're buying animal leather products coated in leather. So yeah, so not the answer, but just some little tidbits to know. And next we're gonna have biomedical engineer and founder of Cultivated Biomaterials, George Engelmayr, talk about cultivated leather.
Hey, thank you, Vikki. Let me share my screen here. So my background, for folks, my background is in biomedical tissue engineering. And so basically you might have heard about people working on making new organs. I've worked a lot on heart valves for children. I've worked on blood vessels, all sorts of different things. And in these past several years, I've actually been working on applying these sorts of methodologies to making both cultivated meat as well as cultivated leather, like we'll talk about here. Can you guys see the slide right now?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. It looks like I'm sharing. Let me see.
You're
Maybe
sharing, but it's black.
hang on one second. Sharing, your screen sharing. Maybe one moment here.
What is sharing? It's just sharing the actual Zoom call. Maybe if you want to switch the tab, yeah.
Oh, okay. Gosh, give me one second. Let me just try this again. Sorry about that. Entire screen. And let me go back to the PowerPoint. How about right now?
You're good.
It's
Got it.
good. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. And so, as I mentioned, these past several years, I've been working in the cellular agriculture space, which is, pretty much a big umbrella term for plant-based meat, cell-based meat. Many of these sustainable fashion technologies that Vikki was just talking about, different plant-based leathers, mycelium, mushroom-based leather, they all fall under this broad umbrella. I've actually been working with cells from a living animal. And this is frankly my favorite picture here as we think about, the possibilities with cultivated leather, leather made harmlessly from the cells of a living animal. This picture was back in January of this year where I visited Angel. Angel is a rescued Black Angus cow. She lives at Sweet Farm Sanctuary, which is in the Finger Lakes region of New York. It's a really beautiful farm there. The folks who run it, Nate Salpeter and Anna Sweet, are just amazing. And they've been extremely supportive of the cellular agriculture space broadly. And so back in June of 2023, we brought Angel to Cornell's Farm Animal Hospital. It's called the Nemo Farm Animal Hospital. This is where Sweet Farm Sanctuary brings all of their animals every time they need a checkup or have, a cold or anything like that, an injury. And so, Angel and another one of the cows was due for a checkup. We brought Angel there. The veterinary surgeon took a very, very small sample of skin cells from Angel. I brought this back down to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I currently live at. And this was really the start of making cultivated leather fully harmlessly. The vision that I had for how to do this involved at least three kind of main areas. One, and this is, I think, complementary to many of the other plant-based alternatives, because frankly, no one company is going to be able to provide all of the alternatives to leather in the immediate term. Everybody is going to take some time to scale up because, of course, the beef industry is so large, right? And so, number one, I wanted to make sure that I was growing leather harmlessly from real collagen and not plastic. And so I'll say, up front here, that no plastic is used anywhere in my process other than reusable plastic containers that I, make stuff in, makeup solutions, stuff like that. But the actual final cultivated leather product itself has no plastic. Again, I mentioned Angel, so isolated cells harmlessly from Angel. Angel lives at Sweet Farm. You can go visit her. Actually, this picture here, I was back at Sweet Farm, and I think this was late July of this year. It was really a magical experience having the opportunity to be out there feeding her apples while actually holding a cultivated leather card holder that I grew from Angel cells. And then Vikki touched on the differences in the types of tanning that are applied to leather. And so here I'd like to also highlight my process does not use any of the chromium, any of these toxic, hazardous chemicals that are used in making this, the large majority of leather in the world, the chrome tan leather. I'm actually doing the vegetable-based tanning. And so this is using powders made from different tree barks, many of which are available sustainably. And so it actually leads to a much neater looking leather, to be honest, compared with the chromium-based tanning. So what I wanted to share with you is just a little bit about how we make this cultivated leather. And there's really 5 steps from the foundational materials of it to final products. And just briefly, I'm working with materials from plants. So I actually use seed fibers, the fibers that help seeds be distributed by the wind. Those very same fibers can actually be used as a foundational, like a textile material that the cells will grow on. I mentioned already this one-time harmless sample of cells from Angel. These cells are actually being what we refer to as immortalized. And so these cells are going to be able to make leather indefinitely into the future. We actually grow these cells on these plant-based fibers to make tissue. This is essentially cow skin tissue made without harming the cow. It's made in what we call a bioreactor. And these can be anything from a small little dish to some larger, more elaborate system. I've focused on reusability as being a key criteria for everything that I do. I mentioned already the vegetable-based tanning process, 100% plant-based finishing. And so there are all sorts of different plant oils and waxes that can be used and applied to create a beautiful, lustrous surface on the leather. And then ultimately, I've been trying, as I'm still a small company, I've been making jewelry from the leather. I've been making some small goods. I'll show you some of that here. And looking forward to doing a bit more next year, some larger items. So just step by step here, I mentioned the leather that I'm currently growing. It's using the seed hairs of a cape oak tree. And I was not familiar with the cape oak tree before doing all this exploratory work to figure out what would be the best materials. But essentially, there are these large seed pods, and this looks similar to cotton, although it has some other advantages to it. The fibers themselves are actually hollow. They're very interesting. This is a electron microscope image of a fiber, and you can see this large air-filled cylinder with a very thin wall. So it's extremely lightweight material. One other thing to emphasize here is, I do a lot of this work in my home lab. I mean, I also work in some other labs, but everything that I'm doing here is so safe and non-toxic that I'm willing to do it at the kitchen table here. So this is me using a little needle felting tool to convert this fluffy seed hair material into a flat, non-woven felt. And so this is very similar to the type of felt that you would use to make different needle felted crafts, except this is made out of this sustainable kapok fiber. So the second step I mentioned, we did this harmless sample of angel skin cells back in June of 2023. These are just a few microscope images showing what these cells look like in culture. I'm actually working with a company in London called Multis Biotechnology, and they are the ones making all of the animal-free supplements that we have to add. These are all the nutrients that the cells need. You might have heard in some early work, companies using what's called fetal bovine serum, which is actually derived from the blood of an infant cow. I'm not using any of that. I just wanted to stress that none of these different serums are used in my process. This is just a cool looking fluorescence microscope image of the cells. These little blue dots are the centers of the cell where all the DNA is at, the cell nuclei. And the green here is just showing the structure of the cells. When we get these cells, we grow them and we cryopreserve them. Basically, we preserve them in these little vials. They go into liquid nitrogen, and they can be stored there indefinitely. And as I touched on, I'm working with another company to immortalize angel cells so that literally angel cells could be used to make leather many years, if not millions of years into the future, so long as we do a good job with all the sustainability and climate goals, right? Step 3, I mentioned this notion of a bioreactor. Again, this could be as simple as a petri dish. In my case, I've been building custom bioreactors. I literally shop for this stuff at Target a lot of times. So little polypropylene storage containers that I can affix together and actually grow the tissue in them, because these tissues do need some mechanical fluid flow. They need some the nutrients being penetrated into the tissue. We call this perfusion of the tissue. And so we need systems like this to grow a nice tissue. This video here is just showing a very small sample of the tissue. And again, this is essentially, tissue engineered skin grown from angel cells. This glistening appearance is due to the collagen, and this tissue is predominantly collagen. We can actually, quantify how much collagen as a function of how long we keep these in culture. This here on the right is just, if we take a slice of this tissue and look at it under the microscope, here, this tissue has been stained with this blue color that attaches to the collagen. And so you can see how much collagen is filling the tissue through the thickness. And each of these little white spots, these are actually those hollow fibers, the hollow kapok fibers that we can see there. So step 4, and here again, we're at my house in North Carolina at the spare bathroom sink and in the kitchen. I just wanted to show this. So I do a lot of the tanning at home, and this is the vegetable-based tanning. And so one of the plant-based tannins that I use is from a sumac plant. These are ground up leaves from a sumac plant. And these tannins can actually bind the collagen together and stabilize it. And this is what some of this tissue will look like here. I've actually been experimenting with a lot of plant-based natural dyes. Some of these, I can source online. Other ones, I really want to try come up with my own unique stuff. And so I ended up ordering a powder made from marigold flowers, and literally cooked this on the stove and tested it out. I'll be honest, this marigold one did not work perfectly, but directionally, this is what I want to do. I want to make sure that all of these products are made in a fully plant-based, fully animal-free way. And then the final product fabrication, here I've got an example of jewelry that I've been making using a thin slice, essentially an inlay of cultivated leather. And I don't have any kind of training in jewelry making, so I've been, at present doing the best I can. But in essence, here we have a bezel, a stainless steel bezel with an inlay of the cultivated leather, and then capped off with a glass cover. And here, in full transparency, the cultivated leather is still not as strong as conventional leather. It's getting there. And frankly, a lot of the alternative leathers that don't make use of plastic, have some of the similar challenges. And everybody's working really hard on this. This here is actually a cultivated leather credit card holder that I made, that I grew from angel cells. And for this, I actually ended up using a linen backing material. So still a sustainable plant-based material, but I wanted to give it that additional structural support. But this was actually made using that new bioreactor that I showed you a couple slides back, and actually yielded a much stronger tissue than some of my previous work. This is actually a sample of my latest leather. And so just to give you an idea of how flexible and really beautiful this material can look, I mean, this again was grown. It takes a good 6 weeks to grow this tissue. And then, as Vikki mentioned, the tanning process, when you do a vegetable-based tanning process, it can take quite a bit longer than chromium, but I think it's worth it. The colors and the texture you can get are just really unique and beautiful. And, at the end of it all, again, coming back to Angel, it's just been an amazing experience, working with Sweet Farm Sanctuary, working with Angel. This is back in late July of this year. I had an opportunity to go back up there. And I think there's a lot of potential here, and I still got quite a ways to go. I'm hoping that next year I'm going to be working on making watch straps and some other smaller luxury goods. But it's just step by step. So thank you.
Wow, that is so cool to see. And what a contrast compared to, animal leather, where there's so much toxic chemicals, like you're doing this in your own home. So, I mean, the future is looking a lot cleaner and a lot safer with innovation like this. And yeah, also have some other comments about this. It's true that other organizations are looking to work on making things more structurally sound. I know one company, they were saying they have different varieties, and one, it's entirely plastic free, but the thing is it starts to biodegrade after 8 years, and then if you want to add some plastic to it, then it's going to last longer, but do you want the plastic on there? And yeah, so it's a challenge for everyone. But I find every year there's so much big news and so much progress made. So even by the time someone's watching this video, this could all be solved, right? So, and in that case, yeah, so talking about things that have come out earlier this year, we heard of T-Rex leather. So this is also cultivated leather made from the collagen from bones of T-Rex dinosaurs. Obviously, they are no longer here, so we cannot use their skin. So George, what do you think about that? Is that even how accurate is all of this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, there are a handful of companies in the world working on this. The T-Rex, I would probably call it T-Rex inspired, to be honest with you. One thing that's true about collagen, and collagen being the primary building block of any type of leather, the genetic sequence, of collagen is strongly conserved across species and frankly across time. And so there have been some studies that showed that little snippets, little fragments of collagen protein that were isolated from some fossils way back, that collagen structure was consistent with the structure of bird collagen, so modern birds. And so we don't think that the collagen from a T-Rex or any other, long extinct species is going to be dramatically different than the collagen of a modern bird. At the same time, when we think about if you're going to grow leather in a lab without harming the animal, well, in the case of Angel, we're working with cells that were harmlessly sampled from Angel's skin. Angel's alive in the field. Nobody has access to Tyrannosaurus cells that I'm aware of. I wish it would be interesting if they were out there, but they're not. And so I think of that as more of like an inspiration. Of course, if from the cultivated leather that I was just showing, some of these textures look pretty exotic, to be honest, and might look like a dinosaur skin to some people, myself included. But I think, it's important as we move forward with this that we try to get the science right and try to communicate it transparently to people. That's my take on it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fair. I think it's definitely like a novelty kind of thing that will take off. And in any case, I support it just for the fact of getting animals out of the equation. So, but what you're doing is truly, I heard this from a meeting with you. I'm not trying to say it's my own saying, but it's really like landing on the moon, but for fashion. That's how like I want to explain it. What George is doing is really that groundbreaking. So I'm going to continue zipping through the presentation here. All right, so silk alternatives and precision fermentation. So the problem with silk, okay, so depending on which study you're looking at, between 420 billion to 1 trillion silkworms are killed each year. They're either boiled alive or they have a pin put through them. There's ahimsa silk, which also ends up with the silkworms dying shortly after. And there's no such thing as silk that is truly ethical because there is some death involved one way or another. And so this is according to Rethinking Priorities. They've shown like it's different studies will say different numbers. And I do want to mention that because we're very evidence-based. I don't want to say it's 1 trillion because it depends on who's saying this. It could be even more. I would not be surprised if it was. And then according to the 2017 Pulse of the Fashion Industry report, so we have silk as one of the most detrimental environmental impact materials, particularly concerning natural resource depletion and global warming. So this assessment indicates that relative to other natural and some synthetic fibers, it's considered one of the less sustainable options. And so what do we have as other options? Orange silk. They use the orange peels, the leftovers from the orange industry to make silk. So that's really nice. This photo here is from Malin & Co. This is made from lotus silk, which is not an next-gen material. It's been around for centuries. It's one of the world's most ancient materials. And both of these materials are providing work for people that really need it around the world. So that's really great. And then we have precision fermentation. So most of us are familiar with basic fermentation in foods like kombucha or yogurt or beer, for example. So then precision fermentation is really the next evolution of this. We can instruct the microbes on what to make, so we can recreate proteins that are genetically identical as to what's found in nature. And that's how spider silk is made. So despite its name, spider silk is vegan, and that's from a company called AM Silk or Am Silk. I'm not sure how they're pronouncing it. I've also recently heard that someone is doing this with fur as well. And there are now plastic-free, biodegradable faux furs made 100% from plants. And according to Material Innovation Initiative, these have 40 to 90% less CO2 emissions compared to animal fur. So I just got these recently. These are Savion by BioFluff. These samples here, you can see the different textures and different patterns. They're 100% biodegradable, very cool. And then from my dear friend Lucky Nelly Berlin, she has her own simply called plant fur. And it's a worldwide movement. Fashion weeks that have banned fur include London, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Amsterdam, Oslo, Stockholm, Melbourne, Australian, more recently Boston. And some of them have banned exotic skins, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Stockholm, Melbourne, Australian, and some of them have even banned feathers. Whoops. And then some government uniforms redesigned. This is a post from our friends at Viva that I've collaborated with. So ethical vegans in the British Royal Air Force can now request vegan uniforms such as leather-free boots and wool-free berets. And these are from our friends at Animal Justice, who we donate to. The Supreme Court of Canada has gone fur-free with this historic robe redesign. I don't know if you can see these little red robes that look like little Santa Claus costumes. I honestly, I cannot take them seriously in these costumes. And they're wearing mink fur inside. Definitely not necessary. I think if you can see the above here now, the more professional looking wardrobes is such an upgrade. And then some magazines that have banned fur very recently. Condé Nast has banned fur, new fur, I should say. So that includes Vogue, Teen Vogue, which very recently has just become part of Vogue. And so I didn't list that separately. GQ, Vanity Fair, Glamour, and more. And within the last few years, Elle Magazine and InStyle Magazine, and this is for all of their editions worldwide. And this is all thanks to activism. And the implications are huge. So for example, why would the big brands invest in fur anymore if they cannot even advertise in these major publications? And locations that have banned fur, let's visit Respect for Animals. You can take a look yourself. I'll just zip through it here. This is horrible. This is not natural at all. I'm sure you can see this this image here. Okay, so there's a long list of, and I say it's not natural because they actually make the animals look like this. They are not naturally looking like this, so they can extract more fur from these animals. So they cannot even really see because they have so much skin around their eyes. So Austria, Belgium, Bosnia, Croatia, there's a huge list here of countries that are banning fur farming. Keeps on going. All of the United Kingdom. And also towards the bottom, there's some partial bans. And then there's also some places that are prohibiting the sale of fur, such as the California state. There's other major US cities that have banned the sale of fur too, which can be hard to regulate, but it's a huge step. So I hope to see more bans. And then a lot of places, they ban these fur farms because of the pandemic risks that they pose. And we'll go over that a bit more a little bit later as well. And then Stella McCartney very recently revealed plant-based feathers that's actually made from grass and not related to animals, but very cool still. Jeans that absorb CO2, and this was at Paris Fashion Week. What about wool? Some people they won't wear leather or fur, but they'll still wear wool. So I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna zip through as quick as I can. I talk fast anyways. So from selectively breeding sheep for profitable characteristics and slaughtering them when their coats become brittle, to clearing land for pastures and exterminating native species, there are facts about wool that make it uncomfortable to wear. The wool industry spins stories about sheep who are eager to be shorn for fashion that's good for the earth. But how much of this is true and how much is just marketing? Woolfacts.com provides an in-depth look at the industry, taking you through the issues affecting animals, the environment, and workers at each step of production. So if you like, I would definitely recommend woolfacts.com if you're not familiar and you want to learn more. You can learn more about who are the clothes made from. They're made from living sentient beings. Wool in the environment. Wool isn't green, it's just greenwashed. Human rights violations in the wool industry. If you want to see some more proof, we don't have to look at that today. But one thing that I think is safe for everyone to see, the alternatives. There's so many. What is plant wool? Well, they have so many here. I couldn't possibly go over them in the next few minutes, but take a look. There's definitely different options if you want to be au naturel. And so this kind of leads into the pros and cons of blended materials. For example, cotton and spandex, or often there's wool blends. It's not 100% wool. And so the benefit of doing this is you're getting the best of both worlds. So for example, you can add spandex into a cotton blend and it adds some stretch, right? But however, then the compromise there is that you're making it harder to biodegrade, if it can even be biodegraded anymore. So, and then even if it's 100% wool and biodegrades, okay, great, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's sustainable. We have to consider the inputs and the outputs to create the material in the first place. So the water and the land required to breed the sheep dipping chemicals used to prevent fly strike. They actually dipped the entire sheep into a pool of chemicals, and that's called sheep dipping. Processing the waste, the methane emissions from the sheep, and not to mention the literal waste that comes from the animal and the pollution that comes from that. Humane washing is the practice of misleadingly presenting a product or company as humane towards animals when the animal welfare claims are exaggerated or false. It involves using vague marketing terms like responsible down or ethically sourced to suggest better treatment than what actually occurs, often leaving consumers confused about the true living conditions of the animals. So as an example with the responsible down, there's a few problems, but just a couple of examples. The auditing processes are pre-announced, so this allows the farms to temporarily hide the abusive practices. And some farm investigations by PETA Asia, reportedly, they were unaware that they were even certified. And then the standard also doesn't require inspection of the parent companies that supply eggs and hatchlings, which are locations where the live plucking is more likely to occur. And then as far as ethically sourced, I had a story about this, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I remember one designer, she just, all she sold is fur, like fur and exotic skins, like all animal products. And she asked me to model for her at a major fashion week in Canada. And of course, unsurprisingly, she didn't check out and do her research and look at my bio that I'm producing the vegan fashion show. In any case, I looked at her website, and we actually showed her website as an example of not being transparent and, you know, being humane washing because, and we blocked out her logo just for privacy reasons. But, you know, on her website, it was just like, oh, it's ethical. And her collection was called an ode to ethical fashion. So horrible. But the thing is, so there's nothing to back it up. And that's humane washing. So it's similar to greenwashing. You know, if we say something's sustainable, well, what makes it sustainable? You have to back that up. Otherwise, it's just greenwashing. Similarly, humane washing is when you're just saying it's ethical or responsible with nothing to back it up or anything else that's misleading. And the traceability, it's nearly impossible to know where the animals come from or how they were treated. Even the suppliers do not know. And for transparency, we can check the brand's website to see what proof they offer to back up their claims. And I'll show an example, excuse me, of Lost Woods. They used to be one of my clients here. They do an excellent job of being transparent, and they're using Mirum. We saw their image earlier. They have, you know, videos and images of the people making their products. This is her here, Holly. You know, what is Mirum? She goes on about like to explain what the material is, where it's made, and you know, the benefits of it and all this stuff. So that's something we can do when we're not sure is take a look. What proof do they offer? We want transparency. And vegan fashion is for everybody, no matter your background or personal style. Here we have brands that have showcased with us, except for the fourth one there. So on the left here, we have the Wifey collection that is from a designer who is Muslim. She's a faith-based designer. She's all about showing that modest fashion can be stylish too. And then we have Jamobi Apparel. They're a Southeast Asian indigenous designer. In the center here, we have QZ Shen. These are gender fluid designs, and they showcased in 2023. They visited us from Beijing, China to showcase, so we were excited about that. And so the fourth one here is a vegan sari, which is a staple in South Asian wardrobes. And so on the right there, this is Monica Kay. She's a burlesque performer, and she runs the campaign Feather Phase Out. So this is faux feathers made from pampas grass. And so we're not saying like, let's wear these fake feathers every day, but typically performers need, quote unquote, need these looks, right? And this is also something that Victoria's Secret fashion shows are using now too, because they no longer use feathers. So pampas grass is a great alternative. Okay. I also wanted to mention, because I think there's a false dichotomy of, saying like vegan values and indigenous values are colliding, and it's not so. I wanted to point out that in Canada here, the British Columbia Indian Chiefs, the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs are working alongside animal rights organizations to ask the government to ban fur farms. And so in British Columbia, we also already have mink fur farms banned. And as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of places around the world have banned fur farms, or some types of fur farms at least, especially during the pandemic, because of the public health risk. And also we've had an Indigenous and vegan model coordinator who was with us in Vancouver in 2024, and also an Indigenous brand that sponsored us, Cheekbone Beauty. And so they're an Indigenous, clean, vegan, and cruelty-free beauty brand. And as a publicist, I really admire they had a few years ago this campaign, which is very brilliant. So they created a line of unsellable like lip glosses and different kinds of makeup items, and they mock named them things like Luscious Lead or E. coli Kiss or Mercury Shimmer. So this was raising awareness about the poor water conditions that Indigenous communities have in Canada. According to an organization called Water First, 18% of Indigenous communities in Canada still, they have water advisory warnings. It's just horrible. So I thought this campaign was really brilliant, because the idea was like, would you use this makeup that's poison, So I think that was great to draw attention to that. And I also wanted to draw attention to that because I believe that everyone deserves clean drinking water. So we have better alternatives. What's the holdup? So cultural inertia, cognitive dissonance. People are holding on to culture, and it's really hard to change people's minds. To sell sustainability to consumers, we really have to talk about the benefits, not just the features of products, which is just like any business. And this is just my own personal insights, but I think some people are worried to stir the pot because they don't want to upset people, because we all know that people will really resist change. But what ends up happening is once the change does occur, after the dust settles and some time has passed, we'll see that people kind of just accept the new norm. We'll see this with urban planning, for example, if they're changing like two-way streets to one-way streets or something like that. There's all this chaos, like, I don't like this. And then as long as it's not affecting people's day-to-day lives, that people don't really care and they just move on. So don't be afraid. Activism works, and I really want to encourage people to get active in their area, because all these changes and progress we're seeing, it's due to activism. We're just about wrapping up here. So some viewing recommendations. Slay Film uncovers the dark side of the fashion industry, and this is free to watch on Water Bear Network. How to Make Drugs and Feel Great About Everything explores animal testing, and modern and effective alternatives, and this is on Vimeo. And of course, Selena, if you could put in the chat the link to all of these Etheria activist workshop, the series for everything. There's different categories: youth advocacy skills and strategies, peace building, diplomacy, policy, climate change and animal welfare, intersectional human rights issues, tech, media, and AI for social good. So there's a bunch of different great things to take a look at. I will definitely be taking a look at that myself. And thank you, Etheria, for putting these all together and bringing us all together for these workshops. And this is about the last slide here. With Black Friday coming up, I want to mention that the most sustainable option is to buy nothing at all. But if you must buy something new, we invite you to check out our Vegan Eco Wellness affiliate shop. So this helps us to donate to animal justice. It helps us to just keep running our volunteer-run organization. So we have special discounts for you guys, and it's not just, you know, jackets and clothes, but also, so we do mention what is sustainable about each of these brands and their products and what's ethical about them. This is a very carefully curated list. So there's a lot of next gen materials, including the plastic-free options, plastic-free leathers, and then also the lotus silk from earlier. These plant-based, they're actually made from actual leaves, and some plant-based pancakes. Those are really great. Some vitamins. This is plant-based dog food. We just announced this. So we were really excited about that. This is actually human grade. You can actually eat it yourself. So that's how good it is for your pups. And some AI therapy. Who doesn't need some therapy sometimes? Coconut bowls and recipes, and some documentaries that are just, you know, this experiences are here as well. So it's not all about buying things. And those are free as well, those films. And that's a wrap. Thank you. And I want to invite you to follow us on social media, The Vegan Fashion Show. George Engelmayr is on LinkedIn as well, and new to Instagram. And Etheria app is quite new as well on LinkedIn and Instagram. And we're also going to have some resources added to our website in the near future when we can. If you want to help volunteer, drop us a line, and we'll have some things up. I don't know, George Engelmayr's Kickstarting campaign is over at the moment, but if he starts a new one, we will be adding that. If there's any other calls of action to, you know, bring his work into a spotlight, we'll have that somewhere around this video for you in the future.